They're lying to him like there's no tomorrow, because that's the team he wanted to have in the second term. He was so irked that he spent 4 years in the first term hearing from people that were telling him bad news. This is like any autocrat who, through history, we hear this story again and again and again. They don't like to hear bad news. He does not have people around him who want to tell him bad news. And when he does encounter it, because you can't be in the real world right now without encountering the fact that there's a heck of a lot of bad news out there that he's responsible for, he doesn't care. He dismisses it. And it's interesting to hear you talk about the Clinton administration. What's so scary is more than half of the people alive in the United States today were not alive when there was a balanced budget in the United States.
That's
right?
true.
Since Bill Clinton became president, more than half of the country was born after that. We've never lived in a time when there was a balanced budget, the majority of this country. And even then, people are upset about what this man's doing. Look, those numbers, remember, this week started off...
You guys are such Republicans that a balanced budget is your, like, highest bar for whether or not the economy is in a good place.
Oh, man, you say balanced budget, we are ready to go dance.
What about child care? Remember when the tariffs were going to pay for child care?
But you actually raised an interesting and I think an important point, because did we suffer from a loss of revenue and support for child care with a balanced budget? No. Did we suffer for other programs that are part of the safety net of this country because the president balanced the budget? No. The balanced budget process is a choice. It is always about choices. And right now, and I think recent history will tell you, Republicans, I don't think have chosen wisely, because they've said we cannot do those things. And we've just heard the president say this. We feed people. How the hell am I supposed to feed people?
He said we can't do child care. We can't do all these things they want us to do.
I will just say this, that as a conservative,
here we go.
I don't think balanced budget really matters at this moment to most people.
I think that's
people used to be worried, don't bankrupt the federal government. Right now, people are saying, Donald Trump, don't bankrupt me. And I'm on the edge because of everything you've decided.
Well, I also I think they're asking if the lights are on and if anyone is home. My colleague Simone here wrote a really incisive piece for MS Now that sort of puts the Biden situation, the Trump situation side by side. Let me read you some of Simone's writing. Republicans said Biden was tired and old. They questioned his stamina as entire news cycles were built around whether he had the energy for the job. But nobody argued that he was going to take the country to war on an impulse. That is the difference. What we are seeing now is not about age, it's about instability. So I want to take Simone's point, hold it in high regard, and at the same time show you just a little clip of the president nodding off, blinking really hard, and then you can tell me what you think.
Other than a decade that other wealthy nations have been getting a free ride on American innovation.
To create the cures for tomorrow. Second,
I think it's both ends.
He sleep.
I will just say before you answer, because when I was writing this, I made the point to say in the top of this piece, I'm not saying this is like a little political jab because I used to be a political staffer, right? It is being reflected in the polling. In the Reuters Ipsos polling, Americans who were polled are saying many of them feel as though the president has lost a step over the last year.
A majority.
That he is more erratic, that they would not describe him as stable. And so the logical conclusion to just those numbers is, in fact, to ask the questions, well, is the president okay? Has he lost a step? And before I wrote it, and then he sleep. What? If Joe Biden had fallen asleep in the Oval Office on camera multiple times, it would be all we were talking about. Yeah. I am frustrated because it feels as though that we are giving Donald Trump a pass because everyone is concerned if they're going to be sued.
I agree. And I think we need to worry that his sleepiness is getting sleepier. But I worry even more about the highs than the lows. The moments of grandiosity, erratic and impulsive behavior are getting more erratic, more grandiose. We saw this in the first term. People didn't believe me when I came out and said we were closer to the brink of nuclear war than folks realized, because Donald Trump was tweeting us all the way to the brink with North Korea, so much so that at the Department of Homeland Security, we had to do those exercises to prepare for the possibility we might get into a nuclear war. But it was even worse than that. I remember going into a secure facility after the North Koreans had just launched a test missile, and we didn't know if it was headed towards the United States. And you know what Donald Trump called to talk to us about. I would have hoped he was calling to say, is everything okay? Are we going to be okay? He called to say, we got to deport him at the border. Why? During a live fire exercise, is the President of the United States not even thinking about that possibility? He was that erratic from the start, all over the place, not caring about these things, and now it's worse. Remember when Richard Nixon, 1974, said, I could pick up the phone and in 25 minutes, 70 million people would die? That was a hypothetical. Donald Trump gets on Twitter and says 90 million people will die. That should scare folks. One other thing, a lot of people don't know this. On Donald Trump's desk, there's a little wooden box with a red button. He had that installed as a prop so that people are sitting in the Oval Office and see him reach for the red button and thinking, what's he going to press? And he presses it and the anteroom swings open and a guy comes in with a Diet Coke. True story. He does it every single day. He presses that button. The fact that the President of the United States likes to joke about practicing pressing the big red button should tell us everything you need to know about his mental state.
There's not a big red button that the president pushes. I do think it's important people know that.
And let me just say before we move on, the president appeared to fall asleep.
Oh, yes, let me be accurate. I wasn't in the room. I don't know if he was actually asleep or not. It looked to me like he was. I mean, you all can decide
Standards
for yourself.
ain't going to come after me. He looked very sleeping.
Let's go with that. So the reality is there is no red button. He appeared to fall asleep. Mm-hmm. We're lucky he didn't appear to fall asleep with his finger on the red button.
That's right.
Okay? I think you raised the more salient point. It's the moment of the grandiosity when he's at 2 a.m. tweeting. Y'all know he went on a tweet
post because he was on his social media, his own social media
tirade
site.
Till about 3 a.m. last
night.
night.
Till 3 a.m. when he probably should have been in bed, right? But that's the way the psychopathy works for him. And so the reality is, here we are. What do we do? How do we deal with this every single day? I mean, you see it on the screen here, folks. This is, from 12:18 a.m. to 2:45 a.m. This man is tweeting or posting whatever the hell it is doing.
Those are the hours I like to spin out to.
He's not.
I'm usually watching my shows, but we're laughing, but it's also like you got to laugh to keep from crying because this is crazy.